Hello, my name is Keith B. Thomas. I'm a graduate student of American Military University, and on behalf of EVSP508 Environmental Ethics, Winter Delta 001, I am presenting affirmative biological control under the guise of selflessness and four major federal laws that address biological control agents and the underlying ethical worldviews that fuel them. Biological control is the action of an organism that maintains a population of another organism at a lower average density than would occur if it was absent. For example, in Washington State during year 2000, the Federal Wildlife Agency introduced plant hopper Pocelsia margentia, an insect species from California, in order to reduce populations of invasive smooth cordgrass Spartina alterniflora. The threat to native species and physical destruction of estuaries within the Puget Sound and Willapa Bay by the smooth cordgrass forced the state of Washington to introduce the California plant hopper. California's plant hoppers are the most widespread and abundant herbivore insect of cordgrass. During test trials, California plant hopper treatments produced large mortality rates during experiments conducted at the Bodega Marine Laboratory Greenhouse in California. During the testing that took place from June to November 1997, 111 of 120 plants had no living above ground biomass after being infected with 203 California plant hoppers per plant. There are 7 steps to putting a biological control program similar to the one described into place. However, I will only discuss 4 major federal laws and the environmental ethics that fuel them. Number 1. The Plant Protection Act, published on June 20th, 2000, gives the Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture broad authority to regulate the movement of any plant, plant product, biological control organism, noxious weed, and plant pest. In my opinion, the underlying worldviews are aesthetics and principle of human survival. I came to this conclusion from dissecting key words within the description of the Act. Noxious weed and plant pest favors an anthropocentric approach to plant protection, or in this case, plant eradication. An aesthetic appreciation of natural environments can feed into an anthropocentric field of view. If the said eco-aesthetic element creates profit for tourism or a local willingness to pay in order to support elements' continued presence, then the overall purpose of such measures is to support human needs and not for the ecosystem's intrinsic value. The principle for human survival aspect when compared to the Plant Protection Act arises from the Act's approval of eradicating invasive flora that disrupts the density of another organism. In the case of the California plant hopper and cordgrass within the Puget Sound and Willapa Bay, the introduction of the insect was an attempt to kill the invasive cordgrass in order to alter the natural landscape to oblige human needs, such as for recreation and fisheries. Number 2, the National Environmental Policy Act, effective January 1st, 1970, of the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, applies to all federal activities that receive federal funding and issues permits. This act ensures that specific activities have limited environmental effects. If the activity may impact few environmental values or systems, then an environmental assessment must take place. Finally, before any changes in existing policy or regulations takes place, an environmental impact statement occurs. Its underlying worldviews are aesthetics, land ethics from an economic approach, and shallow ecology. The NEPA supports the renewed public interest in eco-aesthetics. The degradation of the environment struck a chord with critics of federal efforts to support ecosystems with intrinsic value. Before the creation of the NEPA, inadequate landscape assessments and planning techniques during construction of federal structures overlooked at aesthetics. The NEPA satisfies land ethics as well as future economic endeavors. The NEPA satisfies both through not only caring about what is ethically and aesthetically correct, but what is economically suitable as well. As for shallow ecology and the NEPA, environmental preservation occurs to the extent in which it meets human interest. For example, the introduction of the California plant hopper would not have happened if human interests to maintain the sound and bay in order to save recreational revenue and fisheries did not occur. Number 3. The Endangered Species Act of 1973, overseen by the EPA, ensures that any action that a federal agency authorizes, funds, or carries out is unlikely to jeopardize the continued existence of a listed species. Its underlying worldviews are aesthetics, shallow ecology, principle of human survival, and religious worldview, from the point that native tribes have a hunting waiver and may hunt endangered species. The Endangered Species Act of 1973 supports future generations and ensures that aesthetic pleasures are gained from wild species. Although the Endangered Species Act's creation is under the guise of keeping aesthetic pleasure and non-instrumental value, the instrumental focus shines through due to the government's shallow ecology stance. For example, medicine derived from purple foxglove treats congestive heart failure, asthma, and tuberculosis. The protection of purple foxglove is not only for aesthetic pleasure, but is instrumental value to humans. The extinction of purple foxglove could possibly affect human survival, which is also the third underlying worldview. So, the importance of protecting endangered species is substantial. Contrary to perceptions of individuals that gloss over Secretarial Order Number 3206, entitled American Indian Tribal Rights, Federal Tribe Trust Responsibilities, and the Endangered Species Act, departments recognize that lands of Native Americans are not subject to the same controls as federal public lands. This means that federal governments recognize the religious worldviews of Native American tribes, even if hunting of an endangered species is in question. Number 4. The revision of Title VII Code of Federal Regulations, CFR Part 330, Subpart Bravo, in June 2019, entitled the Federal Plant Pest Regulations. This CFR subpart specifies biological control, importation, and movement of biological control organisms. The Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service states no person shall import, move, or release biological control organisms unless authorized via permit. Biological control organisms regulated by this subpart range from invertebrate herbivores used to control noxious plant pests to microparasites used with the same intentions. The underlying worldviews are shallow ecology and the principle of human survival. This particular CFR addresses the problematic issue of biological control organisms in a manner that focuses on pure policy, as well as gross actions taken by humans in order to become less anthropocentric. CFRs typically support shallow ecology due to their two main objectives, which are combating pollution and the depletion of natural resources. This particular CFR displays a level of intentional rules that slightly increases human survival through the restriction of introducing non-native biological control organisms to an environment with the potential to jeopardize agricultural economies. In conclusion, the government's overall approach to environmental ethics is anthropocentric in nature. The worldviews described for each federal law supports items with subjective intrinsic value. Bits and pieces of shallow ecology and land ethics might tip the iceberg. However, what lies beneath the surface is solely anthropocentric and focuses on the principle of human survival. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me via student email. My citation references are below.